Hi there, I'm Scotty. I'm a practicing witch, a professional tarot nerd, and from time to time, a storyteller. Maybe you've noticed, maybe not, but it's been a while since I've released a video. Life can get weird. Sometimes that weirdness is interesting or even entertaining. Like that time a friend called me up and asked for advice after visiting a crop circle and his life got rather weird. Now that was an interesting time for me and a challenging time for him. Once upon a time, if the day didn't go well, I'd say I had a bad day. Then at some point, I don't know when exactly, and I don't know why, I stopped saying I had a bad day. Instead, I would describe my day as challenging. It seems to me that a bad day is something that happens to me, but a challenging day is something that I can happen too. When I reframed my perception of the things happening in my life, it didn't make challenging days less frequent or less challenging for that matter. It did, however, make the impact of those challenging days easier to manage, at least for me. Your mileage may vary. Now, over the last several months, it seems that I've had myself a bumper crop of challenging days. After a particularly stressful and challenging time, I looked back and wondered how I managed to make it through all that relatively sane. And that got me to thinking. Yeah, I know, me thinking. That's a scary thought all by itself. But I wondered if managing to get through a rough patch was itself a magical act. Now, my curious brain began poking at that idea like a kid in the woods poking something with a stick. What's magical? What's an act? For that matter, what's a rough patch? And each of these things led me to another thing, and another, and another. It didn't take long, really, before my brain was full of ideas like sticky notes all over the walls. And got to a point that I was confusing myself, so I decided to step back from it a bit and try to organize all those mental sticky notes. And that's about the time a dear friend commented to me that I just had too many tabs open. And it was also around that time that another friend introduced me to a note app called Obsidian. Did that fix everything? No, not really, but check this out. This is a good simulation of what my brain was doing. And then I had an epiphany of sorts. All this was distraction. Fun, sure, but distraction nonetheless. By this time, I had about a half-dozen drafts of a script, a bucket full of notes, and a lot of time spent staring at a blinking cursor. So I went back to the beginning, back to my initial question. Is managing to get through a rough patch a magical act? To answer that, I suppose we need to ask, what is magic? Well, Gary, Gerald, and I did a little video called What is Magic a while back, and there's a link to that one in the description. But to sum it up, I see magic as both a thing and a thing we do. And the doing part, that's an act. Not act like putting on an act, but act as an action. Now, I didn't know this before. You probably did, being all smart and better read than me, but there is this part of philosophy called the philosophy of action. Now, that was a fun rabbit hole I went down for about a week. Anywho, when we do the thing with the thing, well, that's a magical act. But can we do a magical act without meaning to do it? Can we do magic unconsciously? Can we do a thing without doing the thing? That may be the wrong question. Maybe we should be asking, can we do a thing without awareness of doing the thing? When I was a kid, I learned to play the piano. I loved playing the piano. But like many kids, I wasn't so fond of the practicing part. But my mother made sure I practiced, and I'm glad she did. I enjoy making music come out of the instruments I play. I still hate practicing, though. I remember the endless practice of scales and other exercises. Talk about dull. But after a while, I didn't have to think about playing a scale. I didn't have to think about the notes on the sheet music. All that stuff was ingrained in my head, and one might even say, in my fingers. I'm not sure if they even teach typing in schools anymore, but so many of us use a keyboard these days, we got to be learning it from someplace. I took a typing class in high school. I remember finding it to be easy enough. That could be because, thanks to my years of playing piano, I had some transferable hand-eye skills. Skills I didn't have to think about. And that's the thing about practice, right? It may be dull and boring, but it's kind of what gets those skills stuck in our heads and our hands and even in our hearts. Whoa, hearts? What's up with poetry? I love me some banana pudding. I think it's my favorite thing. For most of my life, instead of birthday cake, my mother would make me a banana pudding. And now, whenever I smell a banana pudding, I think of her. We all have emotional connections, all wired up in our hearts. Some, like banana pudding, make us feel good. Others might make us feel bad. But we have all kinds of emotional connections living rent-free right in our hearts. What's this have to do with magic, you might ask? And that'd be a good question. When we practice magic, make serious practice of it, we develop certain skills and connections. It's not about the words we say or about the herbs we use or the stones, not directly. All that stuff is just a part of it. But deep inside a practitioner are ingrained skills and connections developed over time. Things like focus and concentration, an increased awareness of our own inner worlds, the connections made in our hearts. And I think that sometimes, when we find ourselves challenged, we tap into the part of our practice which has become a part of us. The parts of our practice we don't have to think about anymore. Is getting through a rough patch a magical act? I think it is sometimes. We may not realize we've moved magic around, not while it's happening, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. During my personal explorations of this idea, I talked with some experienced practitioners I know, and I asked them the same question. Is just getting through a rough patch a magical act? And every single one of them said yes, sometimes. Yes, it depends. My follow-up question to them was, is it more likely for an experienced practitioner to have this experience or an inexperienced one? One acquaintance said that it was more likely for an inexperienced practitioner to have that experience because they lacked control, that they weren't as in touch with their skills and abilities to move energy. In one way, I can agree with that. When I was studying martial arts and I became more skilled, and granted, I wasn't ever what one might call impressive, but I did get better as time went on, I came to realize that I would rather spar against a black belt than a white belt. That was because the white belt was more likely to hurt me when they did hit me. They didn't have as much control over their techniques as a black belt would. That black belt could hit as hard or as soft as they wanted. They had learned not only power, but control as well. An inexperienced practitioner doesn't have the same level of focus and control as a more seasoned practitioner. They may unconsciously put out energy they don't intend to. I then asked, is an experienced practitioner more likely to be effective when they unconsciously move energy? In talking with others, I developed a more nuanced set of questions. Is getting through a rough patch a magical act? And if so, is an experienced practitioner more likely to experience this than an experienced practitioner? Which practitioner is typically going to be more effective? All these friends, colleagues, and acquaintances agreed that sometimes we can unconsciously move energy around, and that when we do, Experience within practice produces more effective results. When I first started pondering my question, I was thinking of it in a sense of, do we sometimes unconsciously use magic to help ourselves? And I think we do. But what about the other side of that question? Do we sometimes unconsciously use magic to hinder ourselves? I was talking to this fellow one day, and he was asking me for advice on an issue he was having. He thought that maybe somebody had thrown some bad energy his way. He didn't have any evidence, per se, just that this other person had said to him that they could do it, not that they had done it. And I asked him if he thought that maybe his worry that it had been done was what was tripping him up. After all, I said, sometimes we sabotage ourselves. So I pointed him towards something that he could do to manage his worry, and to be thorough towards something that he could do if his troubles were indeed from an outside source. After all, sometimes we sabotage ourselves. Bad habits are simply patterns we hold and repeat which don't help us. And these patterns are related to things inside ourselves, stuff in our hearts, connections we have that we may not be aware of. So just like it might be possible that we help ourselves with magic without realizing it, we might also trip ourselves up. And that's where the practice part of our practice comes in. Practicing the foundational and fundamental skills of magic allow us to be more effective with our magic. I've put a link in the description to a video that Gary and I did a while back about what I think the fundamental skills of magic are. Practice makes perfect, or so it's said. And practice not only makes us more effective, but through practice we can become more aware of our own patterns of thought and feelings. And with that awareness, it becomes less likely that we'll move energy in such a way as to trip ourselves up. Is getting through a rough patch a magical act? Sometimes. Sometimes we don't know how we managed it, but we found the energy, the determination, the will to get through it. And sometimes, maybe sometimes, we drew on our own magic to help that happen. Now, you may have noticed that part of the title of this video is Magical Moments, and that's a different idea, kinda, sorta. Have you ever had a moment when suddenly you felt a sense of awe and wonder, and the experience just kind of lifted you up? I've been fortunate, I think, in my life. I've had more than a couple of these. I've had them on a football field performing a halftime show. I've had them alone in the woods. I had one recently while driving to work. I was just driving along on my typical morning commute when I noticed some critters at the side of the road. Oh, cool, I thought. The turkeys are back. And then I noticed some of those turkeys weren't grown. Ooh, baby turkeys! This just tumbled right out of me with such a sublime sense of joy that it caught me off guard. I don't know about you, but I'd say for myself at least, that was a magical moment. We can find those moments all over, whether it's from an intentional practice, a seasonal ritual, a really good concert, a good book, a quiet moment, just sitting at home. Moments that leave us feeling uplifted, feeling a part of the energy of existence, feeling invigorated and recharged. We can be caught up in the beauty of a sunset. We can feel those little goosebump moments from a song that inspires us. Do we say these are magical moments because that's just a word we can use to describe them, or might there actually be magic right there moving around? I think that there is magic moving in those moments where we find ourselves slipping out of time and space and just being connected with an experience or a feeling. In those moments, we are connecting with the energy that we call magic. But I also wonder, are there magical moments that we wouldn't find uplifting, that we wouldn't call positive? Yeah, it's more fun to think about magic as sparkly and shiny and all puppies and kittens, and that's surely a part of it. But magic, as I see it, and your mileage may vary, but magic is energy. Electricity is an energy. We can use it to charge our phones, heat our homes, make a lovely banana pudding. But if you accidentally touch electricity, it's not something you might call positive. Trust me, experiencing an electric shock isn't something that I'd recommend. And magic, like electricity, is neutral. It's neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. And I think that it's possible to have magical moments that we would probably not call a positive experience. But with practice and awareness, these experiences can have less of an impact on us. Those rough moments don't hit us as hard because we're able to understand them better and manage those energies better. Have you ever fallen down and scuffed your knee? That's nothing new, right? It hurts, of course, but we get up and we keep on keeping on. But when a little kid scuffs their knee for the first time, they respond differently. For them, up till that moment in their lives, this is the worst pain they have ever felt. And it's the scariest thing that's ever happened. But as they get older and experience a scuffed knee again, and with some love and support from mom, dad, granny, they learn that those experiences, while painful, aren't quite so bad as they once had thought. We learn that, wow, this hurts, but I'm going to be okay. So I think in a magical practice, the more we practice, the better we get at what we do, the easier it becomes for us to manage those experiences that we wouldn't call positive. Those sublime and uplifting experiences we connect with, those can charge us up. They can fill our magical gas tank. And those bad experiences, well, they take a little gas out of that tank. But with practice and experience, we can manage all that. We have the skills and tools and the practice which help things not be quite so bad. Wow, this hurts, but I'm going to be okay. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with me today. If you've enjoyed your time, please like, subscribe, share, comment. I'm Skaji. Safe journeys.